Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 487 for the 2nd of Nissan in a regular year. Have you ever dabbled in affirmations? Even if you haven't, I'm sure that you've heard about this concept of affirmations. One person who speaks about this a lot is Scott Adams. He's really into it. Scott Adams is the author of Dilbert Comics, and he also has lately become a political commentator since the times of Trump, pretty much. And so he writes about affirmations a lot, about how affirmations he really saw the power of affirmations in his life a lot. The basic idea behind affirmations is that, let's say you really want something out of your life. You want a lot of money, you want to meet somebody, you want to get a new job, whatever it is that you're looking to get. And you write down certain things every day. You write down certain sayings to the effect, affirming the fact that you will get these things with a full confidence. And then you say these things out loud. And speaking the words, the affirmation out loud, is a core practice behind these affirmations. So today, I don't want to get so much into the practice of affirmations per se, and whether they work or not. That's a subject for another time. But I want to use that as kind of like an interesting segue into the topic of today, namely the interesting part about affirmations to me is the fact that there's an acknowledgement of the fact that it's not enough just to read the affirmations in your head, but you actually have to speak the affirmations out loud. That there's something about the power of speech that makes the affirmation come to life and really gives it power. And I'm not a super expert in affirmations, but my understanding of affirmations is that even if you don't actually fully believe the affirmations that you're saying, and even if you're not totally concentrating while you're saying the affirmations, by the mere act of speaking the affirmations out loud gives these affirmations power and has the desired effect. Obviously, if you really intend and concentrate on the affirmations, it's going to be a little bit stronger. But even just speaking the affirmations, using the power of your speech, is going to give the effect that you desire through the affirmations. So I think this is really interesting because it really parallels what we're going to be learning in today's Tanya in a certain sense, in not a direct way, but somewhat related. And we are beginning chapter 38 for context. And we're going to be talking about the power of speech specifically, and about why it is that speech is such an integral part of our Jewish observance, specifically when it comes to prayer. And this is actually true for Torah study as well. But today, the Alter Rebbe really focuses on prayer. It's not enough to just read the words in your head. So just like open up a book and like read them in your head. You actually, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah or fulfill the mitzvah of praying, you need to speak the words out loud. And this is such a powerful mitzvah, and this is such a powerful aspect of the mitzvah, that it is the mitzvah itself, that even that if a person has the best intention in the world, but they don't speak the words out loud, they don't fulfill anything, versus a person could be speaking the words and saying the words, and maybe their mind is in a totally different place, but it doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter. It is good to have good concentration, as we will learn. But even if you don't have that proper concentration, merely by speaking the words, it actually does have a very profound effect. So let's get straight into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this and explains why this is. So here we go. So the Alter Rebbe begins and he says that with the context of all that we've learned above. So what is it that we've learned above so far? So if you remember in the last chapter, in the last few episodes, we've been talking about this whole idea about what is more important, giving charity or learning Torah, and the purpose of life and the world and everything. And specifically, really the culmination of it all was this idea that was talking about the godly soul and talking about the godly soul's descent here into this world, into this physical plane of reality. And we concluded and came to understand that the godly soul did not descend into this physical world for its own sake at all, but it really came here for the sake of the animal soul and for the sake of the physical body. That's what it came here for. So the Alter Rebbe wants you to keep this in mind when we now embark on this new chapter. And he says, with this in mind, we will now understand this halacha that comes up in the Talmud and also in Shulchan Aruch. So in the Talmud, it comes up in Brachos in Brachos page 20b, and in Shulchan Aruch, it's found in Orach Chaim 62:3, where it says Hirur lav kedibur dame, which literally means that meditation or contemplation does not take the place of speaking something out loud. So what does this mean? This means, like I was mentioning in the introduction, that if a person reads Shema, the Kriya Shema prayer, in his thought and in his heart alone, with all of the power of his intention, he is not considered as one who fulfilled his obligation to recite the Shema. And he has to go back and read it again. And so too, this is similarly the case with Birkas Hamazon, the grace after meals, which is from the Torah. And so too with all of the other brachos, all of the other blessings that come from the rabbinical blessings and prayer. If a person just says these with their lips and didn't have the kavana behind them, didn't have intention behind them, he still fulfilled his obligation, b'di'evad, after the fact. So it's obviously we're supposed to have proper intention before we start praying, and we should have the intention of having the right intention and try to have good intention. But if, let's say, you say these prayers or you say these blessings and you realize, oh, whoops, I didn't have the right intention when I prayed, it doesn't matter. You still fulfilled your obligation of prayer, and you don't have to go back. Except for there are a couple of exceptions. A couple of exceptions are the first pasuk, the first verse of Shema, and the first bracha, the first blessing of the prayer of the Shmoneh Esrei, the Amida prayer. So, and this is explained in chapter 2 of Brachos. And this is why it says in chapter 2 of Brachos that it says, when it's explaining all of the different laws regarding prayer, it says, until here is the mitzvah of intention, of kavana, and from now on is the mitzvah of reading, etc. So meaning to say that, like, yes, we do definitely need to have intention when we say the first verse of Shema, and also when we say the first bracha of Shmoneh Esrei, but from then on, yes, well, we're supposed to have intention. We still, the main thing is the recitation out loud, the articulation out loud. And the reason for this is because the neshama, the godly soul, like we mentioned, does not need rectification in its own right through the mitzvahs, but rather the whole purpose of the godly soul down here is to draw down light into this world, to rectify the animal soul and the body through the letters of speech that come out through the speaking soul, through the 5 organs of verbal articulation, and so too through the different mitzvahs that the soul does through the body, through all of the organs of the body. So the basic idea is that, as we've mentioned, the soul itself does not need to be rectified. There's a reason that the soul came down here into the world, and it's for the sake of the physical world. It's for the sake of the physical body. It's for the sake of the animal soul and refining the animal soul and all of that. So really, prayer without speaking the words out loud you're missing the point. On the other hand, the Alter Rebbe is now going to go on and throw a wrench into this whole argument about the importance of physical speech and how the physical words, the articulation of the physical words is more important than your intention, by bringing up this teaching that prayer without intention is like a body without a soul, which seems to imply that it's kind of meaningless, like it's sort of like you think of like a golem or like a robot or something like that walking around. Like, what's the value of a person who doesn't have a soul? Like, you might have seen one of those AI movies where there's even, let's say, a robot that looks really, really, really realistic and everything. And a person might even develop like feelings and emotions towards this robot. But once they discover that it's a robot, then it's really creepy. It's really weird, right? There was a Twilight Zone episode about that, actually, where there was this man stranded on in the middle of outer space, and somebody made a robot to keep him company, and you really just see there's something creepy about this attachment that he has to the robot, because the robot doesn't have a soul. Like, there's, it's not a person. As much as it looks like a person, as much as it acts like a person, speaks like a person, it's not a person. So the same idea with prayer. As much as we're saying that the main thing is to speak the words out loud, that's all nice and good, but is it really that valuable if there's what if there is no intention behind it at all? So the Alter Rebbe is going to go on here and speak about that idea. So this teaching that prayer without kavana, without intention, is like a body without a soul, is found in many different places, and the Alter Rebbe brings it up here, and he says, to explain this, he says that really everything in the world, not just people. Like, when we think of a soul, when we think of a body, we think of this in terms of people. But the truth is, this actually doesn't only apply to people. This applies to all of creation, everything in the world, animals, vegetables, even rocks and inanimate objects. They all have a spirit and a body. They have a body and a soul to them. So what do we mean by the soul or the spirit of these creatures in the world that are not human? This is the vivifying force that is within them. So we know that, God vivifies everything in the world, something from nothing at all time. And so this vitality that God flows into them, this is what we can think of as the spirit of that object. So even, like I mentioned, even rocks and even like totally inanimate objects have within them this light of God that's coming into them at all times. And if this light of God were not to be there, they would revert to naught and nothingness. Like, the true sustainability of the physical world, of every physical object, is actually the godly force behind it all. So they've done these experiments where scientists try to replicate the creation of the world, but they always have to start with something. There's always some type of chemical or mineral or something that they have to begin with. Only God can create something from nothing, because truly everything in the world is ultimately is sustained by godliness. So it's sort of like we can look at creation from two aspects. We can look at creation from the physical aspects of the world, and that would be like the same category of like the movement of our lips and, that kind of stuff. That's like pure physicality. And that too, the Alter Rebbe is teaching us, and that's, sort of the subject of today's episode, today's section, is also godly. Like, even pure physicality is also godly. But then not only is pure physicality also godly, every physical object has a spirituality within it. That's something separate. It has a spirit to it. And so that spirituality, that level of spirituality actually radiates godliness in a much greater degree. It's a much more intense. We can't compare the two types of revelation, of vitality, of those two things. So where this is leaving us today, this is the end of the section for today, is really a kind of hint at this idea that we're going to continue talking about further on, coming up in the Tanya, about the importance of intention. So it's like with everything that we've been learning about how you must speak the words out loud. It's not enough to just like have great intention in your head. Loving God in your heart is not enough. It needs to be grounded in action and all of that. We're going to learn that nevertheless, there is a place, and actually a very important place, for intention. And as we go further into the text, we'll learn a little bit more about what that means exactly on a deeper level. So stay tuned, and we'll continue with this chapter tomorrow, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.